Aloha, greetings, welcome to the Astrology Livestream. I am Nick Chepso. He is Patriciris. We are now a bicontinental operation. I am in Cape Town, South Africa. You are in the deep, dark reaches of Michigan. How you doing, Watson?
Uh yeah, I'm doing okay. I don't appreciate losing the hour of sleep that's been robbed from us. Um Anyone who knows me knows I'm a big opponent of daylight saving time in general. I got to say that was one of the nice things about living in Phoenix. Arizona doesn't observe daylight saving, and I think that we should probably, try to live more in tune with the natural rhythms of time. But you know, uh,
Yeah.
this is what we got for now. So,
Hey, you want
yeah,
to know another place that doesn't celebrate daylight savings time?
Sonora,
South
Mexico.
Africa.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
South Africa. Yeah, no need to. In other words, one of the reasons we're starting a few minutes late, let's just be blunt here. I was expecting to do this an hour from now, and I was not ready. And I got a message from you saying, "Hey, Nick, ready to start in 2 minutes?"
I
And I'm
yeah,
like,
I didn't want to push it. I was like, it was
"Well,
getting close. I'm like,
yeah,
usually he's
2 minutes before was, definitely the hot hour." So we're getting off to a late start. I don't have my camera set up, so I'm here using my laptop camera and laptop mic. I've been totally caught with my pants down. Although, don't worry, I won't stand up. Uh, I'm wearing pants. It's a figuratively speaking.
you know, it's okay if you're not wearing pants, Nick. I mean,
I
50% of the time I may or may not be.
Thanks for that, Watson. Thanks. Uh, thanks for the mental image. Um, Maybe I'm going to ask you to stand up every time
No.
we start.
Yeah, I'm wearing some plaid pajama pants right now, so
Okay.
I'm comfy.
Well, I'm wearing shorts because it is summer down here in the Southern Hemisphere. So I've come from Canadian winter to South African summer, which is quite delightful, I assure you. Um, all right. Well, somehow we managed we've got people coming into the room and they're coming to check us out, even though we're getting off to a late start and we didn't, promote the episode. So that's a
I
good
did
sign.
a little bit.
Oh,
I
oh,
did.
did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah. I
you.
let everyone know we're talking about the astrology of the Oscars, the Academy
The
Awards.
Academy Awards, and the Oscar goes to. So, yeah, tonight over where you are. For me, the Oscars will be sometime tomorrow morning, but for you, it's tonight. And yeah, for a long time, I did quite a detailed study of the Academy Awards up until about 2008, and then I kind of moved off, I guess. Maybe I just wasn't going to as many movies or whatever reason I was studying other things. But up to until 2008, I was really paying quite close attention to the history, the astrological history of the Oscars. So I do have some background there, and I thought we would touch on some of that. And yeah, we can talk about some of the people who are up today. I don't think we're going to try to predict winners, are we? It's
No,
just not, no. We don't have enough
no,
birth information.
right.
We've got Martin Scorsese's chart, but we don't have Christopher Nolan's. We don't have, we don't have Greta Gerwig. Oh, do we have Greta? No, we do have Greta Gerwig's, but she's not up for an Oscar. So yeah, it's not so much making predictions. I hope people aren't tuning in just for that. But just really to talk about, there is some really interesting astrological history of the Oscars. So what are your thoughts? What movies have you seen this year that are up for Oscars?
Uh, so let's see. I'm in some ways I'm unprepared for this because I don't I have like I don't really have much knowledge of like what is currently up for the Oscars. I remember there was a period of time where I was like really into what movies are being nominated, but I just kind of gradually had less attention on it. But I also don't go to the movies very often since the pandemic, especially. Last movie I saw was Napoleon
Okay.
in movie theaters. That was like the first movie I'd seen in the movie theater for a couple years.
Oh,
um,
really? Okay.
yeah, I just don't go into the movies that much. I mean, I'll watch new releases on streaming, when it's available, because that's just a better option for us since we're still pretty COVID careful in some
Mhm.
ways.
That
But
makes sense.
let's see who.
I've seen, for
Oh,
my
I did
part,
see Barbie as well.
right, yeah. I saw more movies in the theater in the past year than I typically do as well. I saw Oppenheimer, I saw Barbie, I just saw Dune 2 right before I left Canada for South Africa. I saw Poor Things with my wife on a date. So I've seen some of the hot contenders, but there are some others that look good that I haven't seen yet. But yeah, if our viewers want to chime in with their thoughts about the movies they've seen and any sort of details that make the show more interesting, please feel free to contribute in the comments section. And well, I guess the place to start is to go all the way back to 1929 and the very first um, Oscar ceremony. And let's start from there because I was noticing actually. Can you see this?
Yep.
All right. So this is the first Academy Awards ceremony. My recollection of the story, it's been a long time since I read about it. But Louis B. Mayer um, basically it was essentially the first Oscar award ceremony was a dinner party. And, and they handed out awards and it didn't become like this big sort of, deal until, well, as the 30s progressed and cinema became more of a serious, commercial and artistic force in the culture. The Academy Awards sort of rose in stature, but it did start with a fairly low key dinner party, just sort of like your classic kind of industry uh, um, fair, and from there it sort of grew and grew. I think what's really striking is look at the Sun Jupiter North Node here. There's definitely something really interesting regarding with regard to the Jupiter Uranus transit that's going on now relative to the chart of the Oscars, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, in general, Jupiter is like honors awards. Obviously combined with the sun, this gives it a. It's interesting that this event, kicks off this sort of annual tradition of awards and celebrities. I think it's also interesting as well that this would have happened about a week um, after a solar eclipse in Taurus, because we can
Hmm.
see where
Yeah,
the moon is relative to the sun, relative to the north node. So this is kind of an eclipse period. This is sun conjunct Jupiter, but I think the other really prominent thing about this chart is that it's square Neptune, because Neptune is the planet that I think it's easiest to associate with
cinema. Yeah,
cinema, and the film industry, because it's about illusions, and
yeah.
and where is it centered? It's centered in the state of California, and as you've kind of pointed out before, the
Neptune is
the
California.
yeah, the
California is
Neptune sort
Neptune.
of is that, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've kind
Should I maybe explain to our audience,
sh-
if they haven't heard me
sure,
say that before, why
yeah,
that is?
sure.
Neptune was discovered in 1846, right as the U.S.-Mexican War was ending, and the treaty that ceded, all the territory, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, etc., to the United States from Mexico after their defeat in that war. That treaty was signed in the first weeks of 1848. Just over a year after Neptune was discovered. And as soon as that treaty was signed, that same week, gold was found in California, and the California gold rush began. And that's one of the things I've come to identify with the discovery of Neptune is the sort of the Americanization of California, the absorption of the United States becoming a bi-coastal nation, which is what was just happening at this time in 1848, and California sort of becoming this place where the American dream is sought after. The California gold rush attracted all these people to the West to try and find their fame and fortune, not unlike what would later materialize with Hollywood and sort of California in general. I mean, certainly a lot of people, go out West to try and make their fame and fortune in Hollywood. But I think even just more broadly speaking, there's that go West young man kind of mythos of leaving the East and going West to find yourself, to reinvent yourself, to find your place in the world. So there's something Neptunian to me about California in general, that allure of moving. Again, I
Gold
think of
rush.
Neptune.
Yeah. um, I was just going to say photography was also more or less
Yes,
invented in the same period, which leads to, the
yeah,
moving pictures as Neptune
exactly.
makes that opposition.
Yeah,
Um,
the daguerreotype was invented in 1839, which is a little before the discovery of Neptune, but certainly close enough to attribute it a kind of association. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the idea of Neptune being uh, um, all that looks real but is not. Um,
that's a photograph. That's a
yeah,
movie. It's the
exactly.
visions, things that aren't
Yeah,
real,
yeah,
but captivating, and transporting and
yeah, and
um,
seductive.
yeah, and seductive. And
Yeah, there's all this sort of allure and promise. I mean, at the same time that Americans were moving west in 1848 to, make their fortune in the gold rush, at that same time there were rebellions and revolutions all over Europe that year, and so you had a lot of people who'd fallen afoul of their local governments through the course of those revolutions, who found themselves leaving their homelands and sailing across the United States. They were also going west to find their fortune, even if for them, going west meant, winding up in New York City or Boston or somewhere like that.
right,
But this is when you start to get a lot of Irish Americans, Italian Americans, Polish Americans,
all
um,
kind of chasing a dream,
all
you know.
chasing a dream. You know, yeah, a lot more Catholics than had been, considered, um, to put it frankly, desirable to the Americans at the time. So that was also shifting the American identity and the American landscape. So yeah, there's a lot of people moving west, and indeed, like you're right, the just the idea of photography being introduced at this time and being developed, no pun intended, also corresponds to Neptune. The
Right.
other thing, the other interesting thing about this chart, you can see that Neptune was at 28 Leo, squared by the Sun at 25 Taurus. So this, as our viewers should know, if they don't know, we'll tell them now. Neptune generally, it does make its retrograde and direct stations when it is square the Sun. And so, sure, it's square the Sun, but what this is telling us is this Neptune must have just stationed direct within a few days. Let's have a look
Right.
here. Yeah,
And
Neptune had just stationed direct 7 days earlier.
wow. And this is interesting too, because this is also this particular type of Sun Neptune square would have reception because Neptune is in the sign of Leo itself. So it's I think wasn't 1929 like the first movie in color or the first movie with
Um,
sound, the jazz
It's
singer?
it's yeah, it's movies with sound, which is the next place I was going with this, because I've
Mm,
always seen Neptune's ingress from Leo to Virgo. Neptune had been in Virgo, I think, earlier, and then it had regressed into Leo, and now it was going to make its second ingress into Virgo. Clearly, within, I don't know, a month, 2 months after this. Um, and yes, I've always seen the transition of Neptune going from Leo to Virgo. Um, it corresponds to the switch of silent cinema going into the talkie era, which was happening right around this time. The first talkie, I think, the Jazz Singer is like late 1928 with the first Neptune ingress into Virgo.
Mm.
Some of the movies, like the first Best Picture was a movie called Wings, which is a silent picture that was later sort of refurbished to have sound, which was something that happened a lot. Howard Hughes was the producer of that, and he had a lot of aerial stunts in the movie and what have you.
Now, for what it's worth, Neptune would also be aligned with the star Regulus, more or
Yes,
less.
yeah,
So again, it's just kind of amazing that this is around the same time that like cinema as a popular art form is being kind of I don't know, almost enthroned at this juncture.
yeah. It's getting a little respectability. You have to think that back in the 19 teens and the 1920s, you did have a robust cinema industry, the silent movies, but it really was considered, low. Any woman who was an actress, might as well have been considered a prostitute. Like it wasn't prestigious. It wasn't, the whole idea of uh, cinema being like a high art was yet to be appreciated. This was something for the unwashed masses. This was not something that was considered appropriate in polite society. And it's really right around this time. I mean, this is one of the things that I think the Academy Awards was designed to change, was the image of cinema, that it
to
did,
ennoble it.
yeah, to ennoble it and give it some stature and some class. So
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Um,
and you said it was Goldwyn Mayer who
it
organized the
was
first
Louis B. Mayer.
Louis Mayer.
I can just a moment here. I'll put up
Because
his
that's
chart.
another thing that just kind of tickles me about Neptune and Leo. Is I mean, yes, we associate Leo with like celebrities or leaders or people who are, whose names are in lights, who are of a high status or something. But it's also just kind of funny to think that like one of the biggest movie studios from that time was MGM, and of course their symbol is
A
the
lion.
lion. Right, it
Yeah,
comes about with Neptune and Leo. It's like, of all the things they could have chosen, they choose,
yeah,
a giant African cat. um uh for what it's worth. So I think, yeah, I've long thought that first Oscars chart was really appropriate um for what happened, and for the kind of the tradition that it started,
yeah.
and
Absolutely,
the spectacle that it now is.
indeed, indeed. Um, I'm just going here. That's weird. I was sure I had his chart. I was sure I had his chart. Okay. But I'm going to put it up quickly. Oh, that's why I don't have a chart, because I don't know where he was born. He grew up in New Brunswick, actually, Louis B. Mayer. I have a date of birth, but not a place, because he was born in, quote unquote, the Russian Empire. But just give me a moment here. I'll type him in and put him up. Just the date of birth. I'm gonna say Kyiv, Ukraine. Louis B. Mayer, of course, was Jewish, as were a lot of these early Hollywood moguls. Part of the reason Hollywood became this big cinema, mecca, is was to escape the pernicious legal threats of Edison, who didn't want Jews, in the cinema industry, and was suing them for copyright reasons and what have you. And so, I mean, that was another sort of facet to this, was giving, another reason to give cinema some class. Was these Jewish immigrants who wanted the stature that they had worked hard to earn. So we don't know what time Louis B. Mayer was born. This is the birthday that he had, but we don't even know where in the Russian Empire he was born.
Check
But
out
you can see,
Jupiter though. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Well, yeah, the sun Jupiter on is Neptune, so there we go. It's that stuff all over again. We're just seeing Neptune everywhere in this picture. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I've just sort of noticed over and over again, is that Jupiter Neptune aspects seem to coincide with these like advances or sometimes new ways, new technologies that sort of shape trends in movies and in their production or in their releases or in their presentation. And that's almost a whole other topic to itself. But basically, yeah, it's of no surprise then that Jupiter would be square Neptune at the first Academy Awards.
Indeed.
So I think,
And,
yeah, that pretty much
can
covers that.
it does. There's one other facet to the first Academy Awards. It also happened just 5 days after Venus Station Direct. Wouldn't you
Okay,
know? Yeah.
so this
The
is a red one.
red one. Yeah. The Academy Awards started under a red one. And in fact, every 8 years, the Academy Awards ceremony has occurred during a red one. It typically occurs because it occurs in, well, this first ceremony was in May, but it usually occurs in late March. But either way, it tends to be during a red one, blue one, white one, black one, or during at the tail end of a red four, white four, black four, or blue four. So every 8 years you go through, it'll be a one and then a four, a one and a four, a one and a four. But this first one was a red one. And there are some interesting other red one ceremonies. Whoops, what am I doing here? Was I not sharing the chart just now?
No, yeah, no, I was watching it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to check the comment.
Yeah, we have a lot of comments.
Already a lot of comments. Great.
Hello, everyone. Jupiter is serving to magnify the square.
So Stephanie King got COVID at a Stevie Nicks concert. All right. Well, I'm glad it was worth it, Stephanie. I hope you recovered okay. B. Havens, Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is at the Huntington Library. That's the treaty I was referring to in January of 1848, the treaty that ended the Mexican-American War and ceded all that territory.
This unknown person, the Astrology podcast, is asking us not to give any Dune spoilers.
Oh, sorry. Who's saying that?
Oh, this is random person called the Astrology Podcast.
Oh,
Not that
guy.
that guy again.
Oh,
Yeah,
not that guy. Oh, geez. What a pain.
yeah.
Yeah.
The spoilers have been published. They've been in print since the 60s.
Yeah, exactly. No Dune spoilers. Now I really want to spoil Dune. Just to spite this guy. No, that's fine. All right, cool. JF says, based on previous awards, it's pretty clear anyway who will win. Oppenheimer overall, Robert Downey Jr., Emma Stone for Poor Things. Yeah, if I was a betting man, that all seems pretty solid. The stuff I have read from pundits seems to really suggest that Oppenheimer's going to walk away with a lot. So if there are no sort of spoilers, and that's probably what does happen. Emma Stone was really great in Poor Things, so I think that would be a well-deserved Oscar. But yeah, like I said, we're mostly today going to focus on the history of the Oscars as opposed to what's going on now. Maybe we look at Martin Scorsese's chart or something like that if we get around to it. But overall, so let's see. I'm trying to think of where to start us. We don't necessarily want to go through a chronological history of the Oscars, obviously. Since I'm talking about the Venus retrograde, the red one, I wanted to show a chart for one of the things that I've found intriguing in the history of the Oscars that also occurred during a red one. In 1969, whoops, just a moment here. Where are we? There we are. All right, so in 1969, this was the 41st ceremony. This is 40 years after the Academy Awards started. You can see we're in a red one. Venus is retrograde in Aries. What happened in 1969? I think this is one of the interesting things to do is we'll look at some of the more sort of sensational or the rare sort of events that occurred. In 1969, the Best Actress Award was a tie between Katharine Hepburn and Barbara Streisand. This virtually never happens, and I'm not sure it can happen again. Maybe I put up their charts alongside this. Did you know anything about that? Did you know there was once a tie?
No, I didn't.
You're not a big Katharine Hepburn or Barbara Streisand fan?
No, I don't. I mean, you know, I know some rudimentary things about them, but I'm not familiar with that piece of Oscar's history.
Okay.
You know, for my preparation for this episode was basically to kind of look at some of the more outlandish things that have happened during Oscar ceremonies and looked at sort of the transit charts, you know, for those events and sort of looking at them as like electionals. And
Yeah.
so I think there's some interesting material to cover there. But yeah, I'm kind of interested to see now what's going
Right.
on with
Okay.
Venus.
So yeah, so Katharine Hepburn was not a red one, but she did have Venus and Aries. And note her sun and moon are here in late Taurus again, very close to the natal chart of the first Oscar award ceremony. So yeah, this was 1969 was the Venus retrograde in Aries, the red one, Venus retrograde, co-present with Saturn in Aries. Excuse me, which is kind of a one-off. I can't think of another time we've had Venus retrograde in Aries co-present with Saturn in Aries. You know, it's the one time those two transits converged in this way. So you've got Katharine Hepburn was obviously, you know, a great favorite, a really established grande dame of cinema. But then you also had Barbara Streisand, who's for whom you know, cinema was sort of, I mean, you know, she had great success in cinema, but she was first and foremost you know, a singer and in some ways seen as a kind of interloper, I suppose, in the industry.
Right.
So you know, your classic, and she's got Aries rising, the moon on her ascendant one. And yeah, I think oh, and look at her Saturn Uranus rather conjunction here in Taurus. It seems people do well when they have natal planets in Taurus, perhaps. When
Look
they have
where Jupiter was.
Yeah.
It was on her Neptune. So there seems to be a bit of a, again, the sort of Jupiter-Neptune theme.
Right.
Potentially.
Yeah, I you know, I don't think this is something that runs through each and every Oscar ceremony, but
No.
it is something that you see pop up. I mean, this one in particular, because the 1969 ceremony was a Venus synodic return of the first ceremony. And in classic Venus retrograde form, when it's co-present with Saturn, you have this controversy where you have a tie. I think it might have happened once before in one of the very earliest ceremonies that there was another tie, but the fact that it happened in 1969 was a real anomaly. And yeah, you can see that it was, you know, in classic Venus retrograde fashion. You have a clash of two worlds. You know, I mean, Barbara Streisand and Katharine Hepburn are over 30 years apart in age. So you're getting two people from two different generations, two women, and this sort of awkward situation, I suppose, with them having to, yeah, you know, share the award. Okay, so tell me some of the stuff that you've been looking at.
Oh, well, I mean, I just figured like something that's probably been something that people still sort of remember about the Oscars is, of course, the infamous slap.
Oh, is that why I had a feeling we were going there?
Well, obviously. I mean, I feel like no one will ever be able to talk about Oscars history ever without mentioning the slap. The slap heard around the world. I mean, it obviously was just so I mean, at the time, I remember people weren't sure if it was maybe like a joke or a skit
A
or
bit,
something that was
yeah.
planned out. But then people sort of slowly dawned on everyone, like, oh, wait, that was actually real. So
Right.
what the hell? And then made even more strange for the fact that you know Will Smith ended up winning, the Academy Award that night. So it's like you know, it's funny too because I remember a few people on Twitter, I think, remarking on the fact that there was going to be this Moon Mars conjunction on the night of the Oscars, and that ended up happening. I think in a very personal point of Will Smith's chart. Did
Yeah,
you take a look
I'm
at that?
about to I was gonna just first put up a bi-wheel of Will Smith and Chris Rock. And whoops, what just happened there? There we are.
Do we have the
Um,
right? Do we have the right year for Chris Rock?
we
I know
do.
there's been
We used
some
to have
ambiguity.
1966. We used to have 1966, and it's been corrected to 1965.
Okay. Um. So so we have a timed chart for Will Smith. And we can see that. I think the thing that really grabs my attention is that Will Smith's midheaven is around 14 degrees of Aquarius, and we can see that Chris Rock's sun is at 18 degrees of Aquarius, and that figures directly into the Moon Mars conjunction that occurred in Aquarius 2 years ago.
Mm.
Was there something else you wanted to note about their synastry?
Well, just look how busy Virgo is with the two of them. Funny, yeah, Chris Rock, the Jupiter and Taurus. We keep seeing that pop up a lot.
Opposite
And
Neptune.
yeah, opposite Neptune, and then even Will Smith having the Moon and Neptune opposite where the Sun and Jupiter were at the first Oscar ceremony. Chris Rock's Mars on Will Smith's Uranus is interesting,
Yeah, for sure.
to put it mildly. What was the date? Do you have the data for that?
Yeah, it was at the 94th Academy Awards on March 27th, 2022.
March 27th, 2022.
2022. And I don't know that we actually have the exact time of the slap itself. We could just use
No,
like
I generally put these
7
charts
p.m. or
for the
something.
start of the ceremony, and then we could do some deep research sometime and try to determine that. But just a moment, I'm going to put this up. Okay, and all right, so this is Will Smith. What's going on here? Will Smith. Yeah, so there's that Moon Mars with the Venus Saturn.
Oh, look where Jupiter is. It's with Neptune.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
How about that? And yeah, and configure, opposite Will's own Jupiter. I guess Jupiter opposite Jupiter is the keep my wife's name out of your damn mouth.
well,
Trans-
but he also won. He won that night.
yeah,
I mean, so having a Jupiter transit in your 10th house, I mean, he achieved this, dream, for an actor. He reached the absolute top of recognition that you can in that field. It just happened to coincide with, the worst decision that someone could make, or just an inability to hold back this feeling. So it's
indeed.
interesting that both Jupiter, this Jupiter Neptune conjunction in the 10th was happening at the same time as is having this transit involving both malefics, right around the degree of his MC, specifically Moon Mars, and there were some repercussions, I think, for what happened. I think he's been banned from attending for like a few years, and
repercussions for treating Chris Rock like a percussion instrument, I think, is
no,
um,
right.
right.
So this is interesting too, because we can see this would have also happened really close to Chris Rock's sun in Aquarius. Do you want to put
let's put him up in a minute. I was also just gonna I'll put up a bi-wheel with Chris and the Academy Awards. The tri-wheel will be sort of overwhelming, I think, for the audience. I just wanted to point out, look at where the nodes are. We keep seeing like this third decan of Taurus, where the Sun, Jupiter, and North Node were in 1929, popping up, and this is where the eclipses are happening again in this particular year.
Mars is back in Aquarius, by the way, and actually, the Astrology podcast just said Moon Mars conjunction in Aquarius occurred the other night during Biden's fiery State of the Union speech. I also thought that was interesting as well with that Moon Mars conjunction, that Marjorie Taylor Greene was like dressed in red and like would not shut up during the entire thing. So I mean,
no, I'm not going to say. I was about to say something I definitely should not say, so I'll just stop myself there.
But yeah, she's like dressed in red with the the MAGA hat and everything, and
I saw that.
Just so I thought that was kind of the way I saw that Moon Mars conjunction play out. It wasn't just Biden's vigor, but also this kind of annoying presence in the audience. So sorry, let's look at Chris Rock.
This is Chris Rock's transit. So you can see, I mean, this whole Aquarius stellium very close to his sun. He's got a few things in Aquarius, but that sun of his, Saturn on the sun. This is the thing with a diurnal chart. I got to hand it to Chris Rock. He's been one of my favorite comedians for 30 years. He's really, really talented at his craft. But I took on a whole new respect for him when it came to the slap. First of all, he stood there and he took it, and he handled it with aplomb and dignity. Like, I know I wouldn't have if it had been me.
He immediately followed it up with, well, one, he just looked a little shocked, but then he was like, well, that was like the greatest night of television, something like that.
Yeah.
Greatest night of television history.
And
not entirely wrong either. But he did handle it pretty well, for all all things considered.
And he's obviously he rightfully made good hay out of it in his stand-up act. His last special, I think it was, where he covered it really beautifully, and really honestly too. I mean, obviously, even though he handled it really well, it is still humiliating to be slapped in the face in front of hundreds of millions of people, even if he did handle it with grace. But this is these are some dynamite transits here, aren't they? Anyway,
go ahead. I was just gonna say, at this point he would have been about 57. So
he's in a Capricorn, so that means
Capricorn perfection. So that's highlighting Saturn the 12th, which automatically tells us for the potential for I guess adversaries to be connected with his reputation over the course of that year. Not to mention, the Saturn transiting through the 11th, so close to his sun, alongside Mars and Venus. I kind of wonder if one thing I don't really know about this is, was Chris Rock like friends with the Smiths? Like, have they personally, do they have a friendship that predates, or like, do they have personal,
they have personal history, but my understanding is Jada Pinkett Smith has been sour on Chris Rock for a long time. That was what I heard. I don't know. Does our audience know? Do we have any gossip aficionados?
Obviously his joke about Jada was pretty, pretty cold.
Yeah,
But there's
yeah.
also some degree to which she just, I think, I don't know. I'm not going to try to, police how people
Look,
should respond to things. I'm an observer.
Yeah, I think, I can understand, like maybe Chris Rock went a little too far with the joke. Um, at the same time, I mean, I think everyone goes in there and gets, they know a comedian's going to make some jokes about them, and it's supposed to be good humored. And yeah, obviously he crossed the line, whether or not that justified the slap
Right. Yeah. Well, there was another line crossed, I guess, the other way.
that's
He
just
could have
it. Yeah, one
he
line
could have
gets,
he could have just as easily come up to him afterwards and been like, "What the hell, man?" Like, But
yeah.
instead, the instant
Yeah, it could have been
retribution
handled
was.
it could have been handled in a classier way. Funny, I mean, we started off talking about how the Oscars were established to give the movie industry, some cred, some dignity, some stature, and there was something about this slap that sort of brought that all crashing down in a
Yeah,
way.
I see. The Astrology podcast provides more context. There was some subtext where they claimed that afterward that he had been making jokes at her expense for years, for reasons that weren't clear. Um, and then Behaven says Rock said he thought it was a fashion statement. He didn't know that her hair was a medical condition,
Really,
alopecia.
I thought everyone knew she had.
I think she talked about it. That she
Yeah,
talked about her hair
yeah,
issue.
yeah. I think I even knew that. I don't follow her closely, but I think I knew that it wasn't, a style choice. Um,
But
well, I mean, the whole thing is unfortunate.
yeah,
I'm a bigger Chris Rock fan than the Will Smith fan, but I did see the Fresh Prince live before there was the Prince of Bel-Air. I saw him live, with DJ Jazzy Jeff in 1990.
yeah. I don't think there was anyone cooler than 90s era Will Smith in like
Right,
Men in
getting
Black
jiggy
in
with it.
Independence Day.
Yeah,
He was just so incredibly cool in those movies. And uh he seems to have had trouble sort of recapturing that, but he is very, very good. And then of course, anyone who grew up with Fresh Prince knows how how good of a comedic talent he is. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, and he won the Oscar that night. Like, no one's saying he isn't good at what he does as a performer and entertainer. He
yeah.
even wasn't that bad as the genie. I gotta say, I was sort of skeptical about that whole movie and why it even needed to exist, but I thought he did a good job. But better than I thought it would be.
I always
But
held him in respect. Google says that
Luna,
in 2016, Chris Rock joked at the Oscars, Jada boycotting the Oscars is like me boycotting Rihanna's panties. I wasn't invited.
oh no,
See, but that's
okay,
like, yeah, comedians are there to rip on everyone. It's not like Jada Pinkett Smith is the only Hollywood figure Chris Rock has ripped on, and most of it
right,
is taken good naturedly. I
yeah,
can understand the sensitivity, obviously,
right.
but as a whole, um, I think if you're a movie star and you're going to the Oscars, you have to expect the host is going to make fun of you, and maybe you expect that you're going to be treated, with some degree of respect when it comes to a health related thing like that, and I can understand her being hurt. But I think if you're sitting in that room, you're supposed to expect to be ripped on. That it's part of the show. It's show business. That's the reason. That's the reason it's on television, because it's not just them getting the award. It's it's a piece of entertainment in its own right now.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought it would be fun to at least look at that. And
Yeah,
especially since we seem to be almost at the Mars return, or just past the Mars return of that event. I'm not saying that means we'll have another slap this evening. But,
No.
I think in general, though, I think it's a great example, though, that, wherever the moon is in an electional chart should in some way reflect the overall trajectory of that event, because it is the fastest moving celestial body. And so whatever it's kind of moving towards is sort of showing what the overall trajectory is of that event. And it's a shame in a way, because the slap overshadowed all of the people who won awards that night.
Yeah.
Even his own award. And so it's somewhat unfortunate, this like one event, this one lapse in judgment, ends up sort of, it's no longer the 2022 Oscars, it's the slap. And I think that's the power of those applying aspects of the moon. So I think that's something I always pay attention to in electional charts in general, but especially when I'm looking at these Oscar event charts, or these evenings where these happen, I think where the moon is, that's sort of telling you that's kind of a shortcut way of understanding the story of that event and what it's ultimately going to be about. Like tonight, for example, the moon is going to be conjoining Mercury. It's going to be conjoining to Mercury through most of the evening. So it's Mercury in Aries, and Mercury in Aries is speech that is more like fiery or combustible. So I'm thinking we probably will see, but short, but fiery. So I think it's the stage is set potentially for, say like some incendiary sort of speech, probably maybe revolving around Israel and Palestine. Maybe it's like pro-Palestinian.
Wouldn't be the first
sort of
time.
shows of support.
It wouldn't be the first time, because actually, maybe I'll put that out. I was going to show a different chart now, but maybe I'll go right to this. Just give me a moment. There is a previous time when an award winner at the Oscars gave a speech in support of Palestine against Israel while receiving their award. And this was Vanessa Redgrave back in 1978. I think she won for a movie called Julia, if I remember correctly. Hold on, I'll put this up here. So Vanessa Redgrave won, was it Best Actress? I'm pretty sure it was Best Actress and not Best Supporting Actress. Saturn on her is a nocturnal chart, and yet she won the award. And she gave
Venus ingressing into the 10th, though.
Right. She went on a rant about Israel and Palestine, and then later, I forget the writer's name, the guy who won Best Screenplay for the movie Network. The name will come back to me in a moment. He won his award later this night, and by this point in the late 70s, like I was going to go to Marlon Brando next. We'll go to him in a bit, but
sure.
In the 1970s, the Oscars were routinely disrupted. George C. Scott refused his award for Patton. I think that was in 71. In 73, Brando refused his Oscar for The Godfather and sent an Indian woman, Sacheen Littlefeather, to refuse the award publicly in protest of what was happening at Wounded Knee, which was under siege at the time. And there'd been a streaker. There's a famous, David Niven.
I looked at that.
Yeah, David Niven was I think announcing an award, and some nude guy just ran, on live TV.
Robert Opel. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So by the time Vanessa Redgrave was giving this rant, this speech when she won the award, yeah, the Oscars had sort of been used as a political platform quite a bit this decade. And so, yeah, again, I forget that the guy who wrote the screenplay for Network, who won the best screenplay award the same night, said something like, and he said, I'm tired of being the Academy Awards as a political, a platform for political speeches. But there you go. This is, and you can see on this particular night, the moon in Aquarius would go from Aquarius into Pisces. The ceremony began at 7:00 that night. I got all these times from the official Academy Award website, because sometimes it would start at 7, sometimes it would start at 8. But here you are. This is Vanessa Redgrave. I guess she was 41. And so she was in a Capricorn perfection.
Yeah, so it would have highlighted Saturn on the ascendant.
Right.
Now, interestingly,
and she's got some Mercury Jupiter here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and trine Neptune. Interestingly, the moon was moving from a trine with Jupiter to a sextile with Venus when it would enter Pisces. So it's kind of contained or enclosed by rays from the benefics. I would almost think that she, well, I don't know the story, but given that the moon, it was enclosed with the benefics, actually that was the beginning of the ceremony. We don't know exactly when she was giving the speech. I assume an hour or two later.
Yeah.
But okay, so if we,
but even still, the moon, the ceremony probably ended with the moon either still applying to the sextile to Venus or maybe just past it. But most of the night, it would have been making that sextile application.
Yeah, I mean, did this negatively affect her career in any way?
No.
Or no?
No. She's Vanessa Redgrave. She's she's the daughter of Michael Redgrave, who's also a highly esteemed actor. Her sister Lynn is also a notable actress, but not quite the powerhouse that Vanessa Redgrave is. But no, she's a grand dame of cinema.
Yeah, the only other thing I sort of noticed then is just that Mercury is retrograde in Aries square Mars, which is on her Pluto in the 12th. But
and this is Mars coming out of the retrograde. This 1978 was kind of like what we're going to get next year, Mars retrograde going from Leo back into Cancer. And this particular ceremony occurred, 32 days after Mars had stationed direct, which, as I've said before, in Mars terms is actually quite short. That's the thing about the Mars retrograde is it's really a longer span than other planetary retrograde periods. The lead up and the follow up to the stations is really drawn out. And this was also eclipse time. Are you there?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just looking at another example of a Moon Mercury conjunction Oscars ceremony as a way of looking at the one for tonight. I guess the one in 1990, there was a Moon Mercury conjunction in Aries, like there will be tonight. But I don't know what have happened in the 1990s Oscars. But in any case,
which Oscars are you talking about?
1990.
1990. Let me go to the file. Let's put that up. What are you saying about 1990?
So it's just the most recent Oscar ceremony where the moon was in Aries applying to Mercury in Aries the same way that it will be for tonight's.
Okay. Let's put this up here. You got that from the file, I guess.
Yeah, the 60-second ceremony.
Okay. Right.
So
okay, well, this was the year that Daniel Day-Lewis won for My Left Foot. Denzel Washington won for Glory. Let's see, what else do I have in there for this? just gonna Daniel Day-Lewis, Denzel Washington, Brenda Fricker from My Left Foot. I've never heard of her. Actress in a supporting role. Jessica Tandy for Driving Miss Daisy. Ah, yes. It's all coming back to me now. And Oliver Stone won for Born on the 4th of July. I don't remember it being particularly controversial or active.
No.
I mean, this was this was March 26, 1990. Nelson Mandela had just been released from prison a month earlier. The Gulf War was still a year away, but the Cold War was all but over. So this wasn't a very, contentious era politically.
No. Yeah, I was just reading through like the Wikipedia page for the 1990s, the 1990 Academy Awards, and the show had received a mixed reception from media publications. Some media outlets more critical of the show. One critic said the effort to make this year's Academy Awards show an international media miracle led to nothing but headaches, because they were doing this theme. They had chosen to make this like a sort of international theme around the world in 3.5 hours. And I guess it just, some people liked it, some people didn't. Some people said it was pointless and full of distractions. I mean, I suppose that could make sense with like Mercury and the Moon being configured with like this square to the Uranus-Neptune conjunction. We know that's kind of the globalizing conjunction, that brought about the global village, information superhighway, etc.
Let's look at some of the winners that night. Daniel Day-Lewis and okay, well, look at again. I think the Oscars favor people with planets in Taurus, conceivably.
Since Jupiter was there.
Yeah. So this is Daniel Day-Lewis winning, and then there's Denzel. We don't have a birth time for him, but I think we do have a birth time for Denzel. Okay. Interesting. This is Denzel winning the Oscar. Here, I'll just put his angles up quickly. Just a moment. There we are. For him, everything was very, very angular that night.
Jupiter, especially. Wow. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
So he would have been 35 at this point.
Yep.
35.
Is a 12th house perfection.
12th house, yeah, that's kind of interesting because that's kind of at odds with what we might otherwise assume. That makes Mercury the ruler of the year. Mercury,
the ruler of the ruler of the 12th is down here in the 4th. It is combust. But lo and behold, he won.
Yeah, he did win. The moon was applying to Mercury, at the time of the ceremony. They would have been going through his 7th, which I guess, I guess we'd have to know more about the specifics of that situation to make sense of it. But I think in general, even if you weren't looking at the perfection years, you can make sense of this event simply by looking at like that Jupiter transit into his 10th house. So to think at the very least, even if you didn't know the context of this situation, you could say this is someone beginning the course of their Jupiter return in the 10th house. So this would be, increased career opportunities and expansion or elevation of the reputation profile, which would make a lot of sense, for winning an Oscar, because once you have that by your name, then it's probably going to be a lot easier, to get offers for more jobs and more interest around having you involved in other people's projects. So that's kind of
this
from that
was,
point of view, very straightforward.
If we go to Denzel's cinema career, I don't have like a super detailed file on him. But yeah, prior to Glory, he had filmed Mo Better Blues, which is one of my favorite movies ever, a Spike Lee movie where he plays a jazz trumpeter. But it hadn't come out yet. He had done Cry Freedom, which is great. I just watched that recently, where he played Stephen Biko, who was a South African anti-apartheid activist who was murdered. We actually talked about Cry Freedom on our when we were doing A Fish Called Wanda, because Kevin Kline was his co-star in this movie, and he had just finished filming Cry Freedom when he acted in A Fish Called Wanda. But anyway, in other words, Glory is a pretty early movie. Like, okay, so Denzel had been in A Soldier Story, which I haven't seen, but I'm aware of. He was by no means the star in that movie. Cry Freedom, he plays Biko, and that's prestigious in itself, but it's not like a big American deal. This is a movie, after all, filmed by a British director in South Africa. And then he did Glory, the one that he won the Oscar for, that had only just come out, the previous December before the movie. So yeah, the fact that he won the Oscar, I think this is really the beginning of Denzel. This is his ascension to stardom, in other words. Winning this Oscar really sort of makes him an A-lister, or sends him on his way to being an A-lister. Right?
Beth Cummings in the comments just posted Cillian Murphy or Cillian Murphy.
Cillian Murphy.
Pardon me. Cillian Murphy and Emma Stone both have Jupiter at 13 Taurus.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Where's Jupiter right now? What degree? 13 Taurus.
13.
Really? All right. Wait 1 sec. Hold up. Throw that up.
Yeah. Hold on a second here. Okay, I got Cillian Murphy here. Oh yeah. I think Cillian's gonna win this shit.
All right, let's take a look at it. Put it on.
All right, hold on a second. Yeah, look at this. I think his chart's quite nicely attuned to that first Oscar chart, don't you?
Indeed. Can we put it against tonight's transits?
Okay. But let's see. What's the
7 p.m. I think.
Right, but the transits are for Cork, so I have to go to
just press location.
Location. Oh yes. There we are.
And then yeah.
Yep. And then go to. There we are.
So wow, nicely spotted, Beth Cummings.
Yep.
That is pretty excellent. So a Jupiter return. We were just looking at now obviously it was a bit further off, but Denzel Washington also was on the way towards his Jupiter return when he won his Oscar in 1990. And then can we also look at Emma Stone?
Yeah.
See, if we had like AI or something, we could probably just tell it like, hey, what's the most common aspect that that actors have when they win these awards? And see what it spits out. I mean, we could probably do that without AI as well, but it would just take a little while.
Yeah. Okay. So just a moment here. I'll put up Emma. All right, there we are. So
Okay,
for Emma, this moon Mercury at the beginning of the ceremony is interesting with regard to her natal Mars, because this is a Mars that has just stationed direct after a retrograde. So she's got this it's not just Mars in Aries, it's Mars that is just stationed direct, and is probably a really important feature in her horoscopic chart. This is, of course, an untimed noon chart. But either way, I think that the Moon Mercury transit to her natal Mars is really interesting. She doesn't have Jupiter at 13 Taurus.
I'm sorry about that, Beth. I don't think that was quite right for Emma Stone. That was exactly right for Cillian Murphy, but Emma Stone doesn't appear to have that Jupiter.
Right, but he does. The Jupiter in Taurus is opposite her Sun Pluto in Scorpio.
For sure. Yeah. So I mean, it's still pretty good. Still looks good for her for sure. Given that that's Moon Mercury conjunction is so close to a Mars, though, that would almost make me wonder if if say she didn't win, maybe that's when the camera catches her looking in an unplanned or unfortunate way, or kind of expressing some kind of frustration or something like that. But that is a very powerful Mars for sure. I've almost every person I know personally who was born during that Mars retrograde of 1988, because I was born 1987, so I went to school with a lot of people from 1988, and almost every single one of the people I know who were born during that Mars retrograde were kind of daredevils in some way. Like, I had a friend who was like a BMX champion. Like, even as a teen, he was like sponsored because he was such a good BMX rider, and he was born with that Mars retrograde in Aries. And then I met a girl in college who was like a champion horse jumper, and she had Mars retrograde in Aries. And then it was really funny because then I had a friend who was born during Mars retrograde in Aries, and when I read her chart, I was like, all right, so what's like the dangerous, risky thing you do? And she was like, nothing, I don't really do anything like that, and I was just like, okay, I guess I misfired. But then a few years later, she gets really into rock climbing. And I mean, like, really into rock climbing, like free climbing on rocks. And I'm like, there it is.
There it is. It is. It just hadn't matured yet at the time.
Yeah, she just hadn't discovered that part of herself. But that's
a great story.
Yeah.
We were talking last night during our private live stream for patrons about that kind of thing, where sometimes if you're reading for someone who's very young, you might see something that hasn't manifested yet, and it feels like a miss, but really it hasn't sort of it hasn't happened.
Oh my gosh! Actually, I had I'm obviously not giving any personal details here. But I had a client reach out to me, who had been kind of worried about what I had said about the ruler of the fifth house and how it's transiting through the 12th, and I'd given some interpretations that could have indicated things like legal troubles for the child, and that they might end up in prisons or something like that. I didn't put it quite like that, but this is what you kind of heard from what I said. But it turns out that her daughter ended up working in prisons as like a warden. Yeah. Like, so she wasn't in there because she was a prisoner, but because she was that was her place of employment. So I thought, so she was kind of relieved when she saw, the result of it. But I guess it's always a reminder when you're counseling people about their transits that you give the full range of expressions and don't unnecessarily frighten people. In any case, that's really, really interesting. What about the streaker?
The streaker, yeah. Just a minute. Someone's because
Okay.
we're talking about Emma Stone, and so someone's asking about Lily Gladstone. I don't know why all the women up for Best Actress this year have the word Stone in their last name, but there you are. So I thought we would just put Lily Gladstone up. I loved Killers of the Flower Moon. Definitely my favorite movie of the year. And for no small part because of her role in that. Beth Cummings, don't worry about it. It's
Beth, don't worry about it.
You did right by us altogether. I mean, you were right about Killian, and it was still worth looking at Emma Stone. So please don't feel compelled to apologize. And here we are. So this is Lily Gladstone, who's really fantastic in Killers of the Flower Moon, and a big reason why I'd say it's my favorite. Now, she's also got Lily Gladstone, born 2 years before Emma Stone, also has a very powerful Mars retrograde, the one in Capricorn, the super rare Mars retrograde in Capricorn of 1986. So she's got that, and but she doesn't have anything in Taurus and only Pluto in very early Scorpio. Yeah, I mean, my vote, since I've actually seen Killers of the Flower Moon and Poor Things, well, I think Emma Stone was really, really, special, and I could see her winning. Gosh, Lily Gladstone was just so good. I mean, Killers of a Flower Moon is just a heavier movie. You know what I mean? Poor Things is a lot of fun, whereas Killers of the Flower Moon it's a great film, but it's not a lot of fun, in the sense that it's such a dark story. Gosh, I read the book before seeing the movie too, so I went into the theater, understanding the sort of the background as it was all unfolding. I'm inclined. Yeah, I mean, I know we said we're not going to do predictions. We don't have time charts for anyone, but even though my preference would be Lily Gladstone, I think my impression, for whatever it's worth, without time charts, is that Emma Stone looks better poised to win. But I can easily be wrong about that. Don't hold me to it.
Well, one tricky thing with predicting winners is, in many cases, it's still a very good thing to be nominated. There's still a huge honor, to be nominated. So it's hard to say that not winning an Oscar should always look like a really bad event, and winning an Oscar should always look like a really good event. That is sometimes a way that our expectations can potentially mislead us from just what the astrology is showing us, which is, what's happening with that person.
Right.
And, for Lily Gladstone, we can see that the transiting sun is on her Jupiter. So, either way, this is a pretty good night, but,
Right.
Whether it's the win as well, is the honor of being nominated. That's, harder to say from here.
Sure. No, for sure. And I've seen that too in the studies I've done at the Oscars, that like winning isn't necessarily always the be all end all. Someone else might be actually getting a bigger career boost just by being nominated. And sometimes the actor, there've been a number of actors who've won the award and then just disappeared into obscurity, more or less.
That's true.
Whereas some people, just by being nominated, it's a feather in the cap. It's enough of a feather in the cap that it really advances them. So there is a nuance there. where the person who benefits most from being involved in the awards is not necessarily the winner.
So this
I am
chart you
still
just put
sharing the
up.
screen. So this is the, sorry, I thought I was I thought I had the sharing off. I was getting ready for the next thing to discuss. This is the 46th ceremony in 1974. This is the streaker night. And Uranus was rising. There's a grand trine of Saturn, Uranus, and Venus. This Venus is coming out of, this is a red 4 night. So, and this Venus is coming out of the retrograde, and it's trine Uranus and Saturn. And yeah, this was the night a streaker ran on stage. Maybe I'll put up David Niven's because he was the guy. He made a great joke. It was like,
yeah,
I think he said something like, it was brave of that man to be so forward with his shortcomings or something like that.
yeah. He said something
really,
like this might be the only time in his life he gets a laugh from showing off his shortcomings.
That's really like classy David Niven, bit of improv there. Probably funnier than anything Chris Rock might have said if it happened when he was on board, even though Chris Rock is such a, whoops, I don't want David Niven Jr. I want the
so for what it's worth, Robert Opal was born with the sun at 29 Libra. So his sun is receiving that conjunction from Uranus, and Uranus is rising at the time of the beginning of that ceremony.
Hilarious.
So there's some things there too. He was born at a Sun Saturn opposition, so he has Saturn at 27 Libra or Aries rather. So his Sun Saturn opposition kind of spanned the rising degree of the ceremony.
Okay. You can see David Niven had Saturn at 20 Aries, like on the descendant, so Uranus was opposite his Saturn. David Niven was also a red 4, just like this was the night of a red 4. David Niven's got Venus retrograde in Aquarius, and this was a Venus coming out of the retrograde in Aquarius. Niven was 64, which means his solar return, which would have been about a month before the ceremony, would have had a Mars-Venus square synodic return. All right, calm down there, Watson. Don't get so excited.
Sorry. I yawn a lot. I'm sorry. I'm not bored, I swear.
Okay. No, I know. I had apnea. I know what it's like to yawn when you don't want to. All right. Yeah, this is that's the streaking.
So the Moon Venus opposition there is kind of interesting. Insofar as it was because you mentioned Venus would have like recently come out of a retrograde phase.
Right.
So like we know Venus is still kind of active or more active than usual. And that opposition to Venus then, along with the sextile to Uranus, I mean, it would have been hard to arrive at the interpretation of a streaker, interrupting the affairs. But I think that is sort of an interesting kind of match for that idea of, and then of course the comment about the man's shortcomings.
Gotta love you some David Niven. He was one of a kind, and funny stuff. I think that the streaking was like just a fad at this time, around 1974. So it was just the thing to do, I guess.
Wait, are you saying that seriously, or
what? It was
about
a fad.
Streaking. Oh,
streaking was a fad at the time, so of course someone was going to do it on live TV.
Okay, I didn't know, like a meme, like
I mean, memes weren't a thing because they didn't have the internet. But no, it was a thing. People were streaking down city streets a lot in 1974, 73, 74. It was a thing that people were doing. Think of it like it was like the flash mob of the day, except it was a solo thing, But I think to explain the streaking fad to a 21st century audience is like sort of a solo flash mob. And by flash mob, I mean, more flash, less
Flash.
mob. Yeah, more flash, less mob. But yeah, it was a it was a real trend at the time.
Okay, I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you weren't alive at the time, but I was. Um, well, it's because I remember I have a childhood story. I went to school downtown, and there was someone who streaked by our classroom window when I was 10. No, how old? No, I was younger than that. Yeah, no, I had to be like 7. And I was 7 in 1975, so it was a little after the Oscar streaker. And what was the other? Oh yeah, yeah. A friend of my parents once, because when now it's all coming back to me. We saw the streaker at school. I went home and told my family, but at the time, like when I was really young, I lived in like a not exactly a commune, but it was a large apartment with a lot of different people, not just my parents, but there were other young people. And one of the people who was our housemate, a young guy who was probably 19 or 20 at the time, told me that he had streaked. And I was like, what? Why? And he said, oh, I just felt like doing it. So, having recounted the story, I heard about someone else streaking. All right, back to the Oscars. I was going to show Marlon Brando, just because, again, going back to the theme of controversy at the Oscars. I mean, before the slap heard around the world, I think this was maybe one of the most notorious events to occur at the Oscars. So in 1973, Brando was awarded Best Actor Oscar for his role as Don Corleone in The Godfather, a well-deserved accolade. But because of political trouble that was happening at the Wounded Knee Reservation in the Dakotas, Marlon Brando declined the award. He took advantage of the ceremony. He didn't turn up. He sent a woman named Sacheen Littlefeather to decline the award and give a little speech in his stead. I remember Roger Moore is one of the people presenting the award. It's Roger Moore and someone else who are there with Sacheen Littlefeather when she gives her speech. But yeah, this is Brando winning that award and declining it. As you can see, he was about to he was 48 going on 49. Like he's a week away from turning 49, right?
Right. So he was 48, so he's in the first house year, highlighting Jupiter, which is in the first.
Yeah.
Transiting through the third. And Mercury would have just stationed direct in a square to his Jupiter. So this is interesting because we know that he's like I mean, if I were interpreting this without context, I guess I would probably say, given that Saturn is like opposite to Jupiter and Mercury's in a square to Jupiter, it's like someone who I would say he was censored, but that's
right.
Actually, that wouldn't really capture it.
No,
He is declining and speaking through someone else.
Right. He's sort of censoring himself in a way.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a speech. He sends someone else to give a speech. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The Mercury direct station square Jupiter, Saturn opposite the Jupiter. And here's the thing, like having studied Brando's life, when The Godfather was filmed, Jupiter was in Sagittarius. Like when he's winning the award, it's in Aquarius. When the movie comes out, it's in Capricorn. But it was filmed when Jupiter was in Sagittarius. And this Sagittarius tends to be Brando's, winning sign, along with Aries. I mean, the fire triplicity is
Wasn't he cast as the Godfather when Jupiter was conjunct Neptune?
Yes,
in Sagittarius, that would make a lot of sense.
I've got a pretty good Brando file right here. So he's announced for the role shortly after when he's cast. These are the transits in Sagittarius when he's cast.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Jupiter,
right.
Neptune conjunction right on his midheaven, or right on his ascendant, and
On his ascendant with Mars. Jupiter, Neptune,
Well,
Mars.
he's playing a gangster, right?
Yeah, talk about an offer you can't refuse.
Right, yeah.
That's Jupiter and Sagittarius in the first.
Also, kind of interesting, if you look where the sun is at the time he was cast, that's where Jupiter is when he gets the win.
Great point. Great
Wow.
point. This is why I play with you, my friend.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's weird.
Well spotted. Well spotted.
Yeah, that's pretty much a slam dunk.
Yeah.
So
Because this really was like Brando was considered to be finished in the industry. He was very
done.
difficult to work with. He hadn't had his successful movie really since the 50s. I mean, there was The Chase in 1965 or 66 with Redford and Jane Fonda, but that wasn't like some huge hit. His career was basically considered over. The movie producers did not want him to be in the movie. Francis Ford Coppola, just pushed for an audition, and it was the audition that won it. So I mean, that was the thing. Brando had to audition for the role, but he did get it.
I noticed that kind of turnaround story might also be indicated by the Uranus opposition to his moon and sun.
Right. Yeah. 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 Good fun. I always love Brando is one of my favorite charts to study. So yeah, this thing always kills me when he's making the movie. God, he was difficult to work with though. Yeah, the first day that he was supposed to be, shooting the movie, he didn't even turn up. This is the first day of shooting. And
Mercury retrograde. Never start shooting a movie during a Mercury retrograde, right?
Yeah, we should tell Mr. Coppola we can help him out. He's working on this great movie that he's been working. It's been basically Coppola's working on his pet project now, a movie that he's wanted to make for decades. So yeah, if he wants to hire some astrological consultants, we're not too expensive, are we, Patrick?
We're affordable.
We'll work for wine, Mr. Coppola. Send us a crate of your wine, and we'll give you all the astrological advice you need for your upcoming production. Yeah, no, Brando's chart is just it's so much fun. It's this grand fire trine. And yeah, I mean, he's kind of your classic grand trine person in that, there's an innate talent, and it almost like he would take it for granted. He didn't like making movies. He didn't like acting, he just, it worked out for him. But it was kind of this thing. He was always reluctant. He was very difficult to work with. He didn't really aspire to anything. He just wanted to make the money,
He noticed that Jupiter-Neptune trine, which we've connected with the history of cinema, when those two planets become conjunct in his first, that's when he takes on probably his most famous role. So there's kind of a way you can see that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Sagittarius as kind of like the grand finale of that Jupiter-Neptune trine at birth. And it would take a long time, to get that, but he was always destined to have to realize that the potential of that aspect to the highest extent, because otherwise, you're right, he would have just been known as, for his earlier work in the 50s. But
and I mean, the Godfather didn't just turn his life around. It turned cinema around. It made, in my opinion, a lot of people's opinion, but certainly in my opinion, the 1970s is the single greatest decade in the history of cinema. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but I'm not alone in that opinion. You can have a different opinion.
I think it's also, in a way, though, it's also when cinema became ruined as well. But all right, the reason I say that is because that's also when you get the blockbuster. That's when you
But
get
that's
Star
later.
Wars and Indiana
But that's
Jones. No, that's the
later.
70s. It all
Yes,
begins in the
but
70s.
that's later in the 70s.
But
But
it's
there's an era.
Neptune and Sag.
Yes, but
Lucasfilm begins at that Jupiter Neptune conjunction. Like it's
yes,
the
yes, it
path
absolutely
to
does.
the
Yeah,
to big Hollywood and the endless sequelization and adaptation mania. Instead of it's like when the money takes over when Neptune goes into Sagittarius, and a lot of great beloved projects come out of it, but ones that we can't seem to kick. Now that we're in Neptune and Pisces, we're still making Indiana Jones movies, and and it's kind of
yeah. Well, here's the thing: you're kind of getting ahead of us here.
sure.
Because the period I want to talk about is the pre-Star Wars period. I mean, you're right. Star Wars came out in 1977, which is in the 1970s. You're right about that. But in between this, when Godfather comes out in 1972, I mean, I guess Easy Rider coming out in 69 is the beginning of this sort of new wave of 70s cinema. But The Godfather is such a huge hit, turns Coppola into the powerhouse he is. And it really does usher in this era of auteur cinema. The filmmakers who are sort of uniquely responsible for their work. Like the film directors have a lot of control. If Brando doesn't, if Coppola and Brando don't succeed with The Godfather, Scorsese's never going to get anywhere with your Taxi Driver or your Mean Streets. You're not going to get around the same time Friedkin's French Connection, Bogdanovich, all these Brian De Palma, all these great filmmakers who explode the 70s before Star Wars. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I totally agree with you about the creation of the blockbuster and that being the death of cinema, but it's all the more painful because of how great cinema was leading up to Star Wars. Like there really was that much more to lose, I think is my point.
Well, and I realize I'm painting this in somewhat dire terms. Like I'm not saying I don't love Star Wars. I do.
Yeah, no, sure.
I love a lot of the blockbusters that sort of came from it, but it kind of set this standard and this precedent that like in order for movies to exist, they have to be able to generate, money beyond all imagining, and
Right.
this Jupiter Neptune theme has sort of continued with the MCU. For example, the phases of the MCU literally match the Jupiter Neptune squares and oppositions and conjunctions. Disney bought Marvel at a Jupiter Neptune conjunction in 2009, and the huge finale in some ways too, like the Infinity Saga, that was the Jupiter Neptune square of 2019, and 2022 is when we kind of realized like that couldn't go any further with like the Doctor Strange sequel and the sort of explosion into the sort of multiverse concepts that emerged from that time, which is very Jupiter Neptune and Pisces ish. But we can really see how this ties back. There's so much of Neptune and Pisces that relates to nostalgia of the Neptune and Sagittarius period, and to some degree the Neptune Capricorn period, of like bringing back these old sort of themes and recycling these sort of old dreams or something. And I think when we get to Neptune and Aries, we'll have another era of auteurs and originals, beginning to rise, because Aries, like Sagittarius, is a fire sign, and
Yeah.
those can kind of kick things into motion, especially Aries is a cardinal sign as well. So really feel like kind of a new start in some ways when it comes to this kind of Neptunian art form. But that's why I kind of link it back to the 70s and the blockbuster. But I know what you mean. The pre-blockbuster, pre-Star Wars cinema, is special.
Yeah, no, I really do feel the 70s. I mean, it's my opinion, but it's not just my opinion
Right.
that the pre-Star Wars 70s is a real peak in cinema history, and that so many of the best movies were made at that time. Yeah, it's my personal opinion, but not just mine. Cinematography, Barry Lyndon. I don't know. I mean, I know Barry Lyndon is a Stanley Kubrick movie, but I don't get the context of the comment. The plague is bringing cinema back. Cinematography, Barry Lyndon. Okay, that's a cryptic remark, B. Havens. But maybe you can explain yourself, and I'll know what you mean. Okay. Yeah, should we take a look at maybe like Robert Downey Jr., Martin Scorsese, some of the people
wait
nominated
a
tonight?
sec.
What?
Robert Downey Jr. has Jupiter in Taurus.
Yeah, he
I just
does.
realized.
Yeah, you're right. Oh my God.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
you're right. He does. Let's put him up.
I forget where though.
Yeah,
I
no,
just know
yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So let's put this up. Just a moment. I'll.
I think it's going to be very important for Downey Jr. to win this award, because I think in many ways he wants to, like, he obviously loves, the work that he did as Iron Man, and he did, I think, honestly, I think it's some of his best acting is in the Iron Man films. Not necessarily the action scenes where it's all CGI, but I mean, he embodied the character of Tony Stark so completely that I think he's felt a pressure to kind of shed that, and
Yeah.
to reclaim his status, as like a real actor, not just an action figure.
Can I just I need to say this. Downey has been my favorite actor since the 90s. I loved him as Chaplin. He's my absolute favorite actor, living actor right now. And in the 90s, when he was going through all that, the drug problems and everything, he was still killing it as an actor. He wasn't always in great movies, but he was always great in them, like really, really good. You could go watch like a sort of mediocre movie, like Two Girls and a Guy, or whatever it is. And he's just fantastic. And it's not much of a movie, but he's chewing up the scenery, and he's being all our DJ, and he was just fantastic, even when he was at this like the lowest ebb of his life. And yeah, I mean, he killed it as Tony Stark, for sure. But I think some of his best roles have been in movies that weren't necessarily worthy of his talent.
Is there a reason we're looking at the 2022 awards?
Oh, sorry. I was looking. That was from the slap.
Oh,
okay. My mistake.
No problem.
And then I've just switched it to. Thank you for catching that. Okay, so change the location, and then go to here, and there we are.
Okay.
Uranus on his moon. And yes, he does have Jupiter in Taurus.
Yeah,
and the eclipses are happening. And let's see, he's not yet 59, so he's still 58. He's in a Gemini perfection year.
So Mercury in the 9th, which is retrograde. Mercury has just entered the 9th
with the moon
flying towards it. So is that more of
Saturn
a sign?
return.
Oh shoot! I didn't even. Oh wow. Huh. Well, I've honestly been a little afraid of the Saturn return for Robert Downey Jr. because the last Saturn return was so awful. That was happening during the time of his the almost lowest point of his.
Well, yeah, I've got the chronology in my Downey Jr. file here. So yeah, the first arrest for drug, this is when he's going through the rough stuff. So his first arrest, 1996, is past his Saturn return,
Okay.
I mean, he probably already had a drug problem by this point. He probably had a drug problem some years before that. But when he really started to have the issues, it was when Saturn was in Aries.
Hmm.
Which actually I was aware. I mean, this was in 1996. I'd been studying astrology for like a year and a half when this arrest happened, and yeah, I was following transits. And I'm like, oh my god, this guy's in Aries and Saturn's in Aries, and he's just been arrested. That was my
Yeah.
nascent astrological observation. Something I
Prior
looked at.
to the arrest, I know that he had been hitting people up for money to support his habit, which was interesting given the the Mars Saturn stuff going across like the 2nd and the 8th. But
Yeah, and he would have
I
been.
guess
He
this
was
is like
30.
leading up to the arrest.
Yeah,
But he's obviously seems to be in a much better place now. I mean,
well, to
that
put
all
it
seems to be ancient
mildly.
history.
Yeah,
I mean, pretty much the most dramatic Uranus opposition you could imagine.
yeah,
He completely turned his entire life around.
right. This was his second arrest. Not long after, I think this was when he fell asleep in a neighbor's bed,
House,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. He went into the wrong house and fell asleep in their bed. Yeah, so fun stuff. Yeah,
So,
I gotta think he's gonna win. I know we said we weren't gonna do predictions, but
well, we
honestly,
have a time chart for him at the very least.
yeah,
I mean, Mercury in the 9th retrograde with Mercury entering. That's to me, that's sort of the key to how to interpret what Mercury sort of means in this
yeah. I mean, keep in mind, Mercury and Mars do have a
context.
mutual reception.
There is that. And that Mars is square his moon though, with Uranus on his moon. See, that doesn't look particularly
Right, maybe,
wonderful because
yeah, maybe it's an upset.
subversion of expectations can sometimes be Uranus, but Jupiter's there too, so it's not like it's a horrible time. I mean, he's won a bunch of awards already,
Yeah,
for this. Um, uh, yeah, that's kind of tricky. I'm not sure
yeah.
what that actually suggests. I
Well,
wouldn't
let's.
assume that it's good.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It could be an upset. Maybe I'm jumping the gun. But look, natally, he's got a Mars Uranus conjunction. So this Mars
That's
Uranus
true.
square is something that is already manifest here. So I don't worry about it as much.
Other actors have won at the Saturn returns as well.
Sure. Yeah. Look, he's
Imagine
got a
there's
diurnal chart. I'm not, a Saturn return for a diurnal chart is not the.
oh no.
I just hope he doesn't go off the rails when Saturn goes back into Aries again. That it would be really unfortunate if he.
Well, yeah,
slipped up.
I would hope that there's often a kind of poetic way sometimes that people relive or revisit the themes from the original pass of Saturn through a sign. So maybe he'll be doing something in that time that is like sort of helping people who were in similar positions as he was, in that time of his life or something. It would be a way of him being able to kind of revisit that era without like reliving it, re-experiencing it.
Sure.
I don't think it's always a re-experiencing
No, certainly not.
directly.
I mean, I think we'd all be surprised if he, found himself running into trouble again. I think that the one other thing I want to say about this, his role in Oppenheimer, he's, whether he's playing Tony Stark or whether he's playing like a number of other characters, like Tony Stark is RDJ. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
he's kind of more or less playing himself. I kind of feel like
he's a very good actor, but like a lot of his roles, certainly like whether it was Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School, or heck, even when he's playing Chaplin, there's still some RDJ. But maybe Chaplin is like the furthest he's sort of strayed from his own personality. But the long and short of it is, he generally plays, a variant of RDJ, including Tony Stark. I read Iron Man comics as a kid. I never thought of Iron Man as being this like sort of snappy comeback kind of guy. That was more of a, you know what I mean? The jaded billionaire, sure, but
That's what Robert Downey Jr. brought to the role.
exactly. But his role in Oppenheimer, Uranus is on his moon, and if he wins tonight, and I saw him talking about this in interviews that he thinks Nolan cast him in this movie like deliberately against type, as directors, sometimes do. They'll cast an actor against type to sort of, shake the tree, so to speak, to not fall into predictable patterns. Because his character in Oppenheimer is truly not RDJ. His character in Oppenheimer is someone who would hate RDJ and those kinds of people. And I think Downey, what I heard him say in interviews is that there was some sense of that Nolan cast him against type so that he could bring this like humbled, humiliated nobody, to life. Someone who's not cocky, someone who doesn't have snappy comebacks, someone who's just sort of bitter and conniving. So that's interesting. I think the fact that Uranus is on his moon might just account for the fact that he's being, rewarded for a role that is not your classic RDJ thing.
Right. Now, has he ever won an Academy Award before, or has he only been nominated? I think he's just been nominated a couple of times.
Let me see.
Did he win Chaplin, or was he just nominated for Chaplin?
Let me check sorry, I didn't need to close the file. I can just go to my RDJ file. Or rather go to, no, he lost to Al Pacino for Scent of a Woman in 1993 for Chaplin.
Let's take a look at that. What do other losses look like for him?
Yeah, I'm just going to see how many times has he. So it's just that one nomination for Chaplin, which he lost to Al Pacino.
I think he was nominated though for his role in Tropic Thunder, which would be 2008.
Was he? Okay, I don't have that chart, but we can. Was he really nominated for Tropic Thunder?
Yes, he was. Yeah, in 2009.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. We'll have to look at that. Like I said,
what a role to be nominated for.
Oh my.
That movie is
yeah. Oh boy.
I mean, in some ways, an amazing movie. Just really just
look, I mean, I've seen, obviously, African Americans in particular don't like seeing white people dress up in blackface, understandably. But I've seen a lot of African American pundits comment on his role and, take a different tact. Not unlike when South Park had their, N-word guy episode. Tropic Thunder did have. It made really good use. They weren't just putting RDJ in blackface.
They were making fun of what it was a satire of
what
Hollywood.
Actors do. Yeah,
it's a satire of actors and the very fact that
they go to those lengths. Yeah.
Right. That because he plays like an Australian actor who's like known for like extreme method acting and to the point of getting surgery to look like the character. I mean, so it's like done kind of as a joke. Like the joke is not, oh, he's in blackface. The joke is, this vain, self-absorbed Australian, method actor.
It's beautifully scripted. Yeah, it's beautifully scripted. His co-star, I forget the actor, but the actual African American cast member, in the movie. Is this great comedy foil, right?
Right.
And Stiller says, you people, are getting on my nerves or whatever. And DJ says, "What do you mean, you people?" And then the other guy goes, "What do you mean? What do you mean? It's just
That's
great
that
writing.
Is quite, right? Yeah.
It's a great movie. He does the role beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like he. I don't think he took it to a silly place. If anything, the movie was controversial more for Ben Stiller's Simple Jack thing. That was where the controversy was. Yeah. That did upset people. But yeah, no, RDJ. I mean, it's a risky role, but you know where we're going with this, because it occurs to me. So 93, he loses for Chaplin, ironically during a Venus retrograde, during a red one. Chaplin was a natal red one, incidentally, but
and Downey Jr. is a blue one.
Is a blue one, yeah. So this is a red one, and if he was nominated, you said in 2009. Do you have the date for the 2009 one?
Yeah,
that's also going to be a red one.
February 22nd, 2009. Yeah, it's a red one.
Yeah. So this is also a red one. Venus is about to go retrograde, within days on his natal sun, Venus. And he didn't win for this either, right?
Yeah. Look at where Mars was.
Right.
Mars was also in Aquarius, and that's where it is this time as well. And this is also at his Saturn opposition. He's now at the Saturn return.
And he's 43, so he's in a Pisces perfection year, so that Saturn in Pisces is getting highlighted.
Right. So, in other words, Downey Jr. probably shouldn't expect an award until like the spring of 2025, maybe. Although these are losses.
Yeah, but he loses during red ones.
Yeah.
So in 2025, I mean, he's lost twice during red ones.
And no, actually, you know what? In 2025, there'll be another tie between two leading actresses, right? Because it'll be Saturn in Aries with Venus retrograde.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Right. Well, because you said it doesn't happen that often.
It hadn't happened. Yeah, it hasn't happened since 1969. It had never happened, in the Academy Awards prior to 1969. So that's a good point.
But
interesting that happens.
So, well, so this is actually the first time he's been nominated, and it hasn't been during a Venus red one.
Yeah.
So that's potentially a point in his favor.
Yep.
Huh. Well,
interesting. Is Leo nominated for Killers of the Flower Moon?
No. No, he was snubbed.
Leo was snubbed. Okay. Well, I mean, Lily Gladstone really is the star of that movie. But should we look at Martin Scorsese and Chris Nolan?
For like a kind of a best picture potential or best director.
Yeah,
I assume he was nominated for both.
I believe he wasn't he? Someone want to verify that?
Let's see.
I believe he was. I'm pretty sure.
He was nominated. For best director.
For best director, and I'm sure it's up for best picture.
Best 2024 best picture nominees. Yeah.
Yeah. And the same is true for Nolan. I have to think this comes down to Scorsese v. Nolan. Don't you?
I would assume so. I wish I'd seen either of them to be able to comment more intelligentely, but at least
you didn't see Oppenheimer?
No, I haven't seen Oppenheimer. I would like to.
Okay.
Like I said, we don't go to the movie theater that often. The office, obviously, we could have maybe tried to squeeze Oppenheimer on the same day as Barbie, but we have 3 kids, and they don't want to sit through Oppenheimer, and my wife kind of has to be convinced to like watch a Christopher Nolan movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
mine too, actually.
I don't have many friends. Yeah.
Fair enough.
It doesn't.
Look, I went to see Oppenheimer like right away because Chris and I were talking about it on the Astrology podcast. Although I would have gone to see it anyway, and I really loved it. Killers of the Flower Moon, I'll always see anything Scorsese does. And I had read the book. I was interested in the history. I have I'm studying the history of the FBI in astrology. So not only is the movie interesting, in its own right, and the book is really great, but also the role it played in developing the FBI is also interesting to me in an astrological context. So we do have a time chart for Scorsese, not for Christopher Nolan. Scorsese has the Uranus on his midheaven. He's got this, he's a blue too. He's just slightly older. He's a week or two older than Joe Biden, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so he's got the Sun Venus Cazimi here, blue 2 in the 4th, and we know, of course, as we saw with the chart of the first Oscars, the third decan of Taurus is a hot spot there.
He's 81, so he's in a Taurus perfection, I believe.
Right. 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So he's in a Taurus perfection with both Jupiter and Uranus that are coming up to the MC by degree. I mean, the only thing that could screw that up is Mars squaring. But otherwise, it looks pretty good.
He's got a nocturnal chart with Mars and Scorpio, so Mars doesn't screw anything up for him.
Yeah, and Venus is the ruler of the year, and Venus will be just off of his descendant. Yeah, angular, like on his nodes. I mean, I gotta say that is looking pretty good.
Yeah.
That's looking very good for
that does look pretty good.
Now, does that mean just best director or just best picture or both? It's hard to say,
right.
What
especially
extent.
Yeah. I wonder if there isn't a split. Like, okay, so now we'll go to Christopher Nolan. We don't have a time for Christopher Nolan. But yeah, okay, we don't have a time for him. But he's got Saturn here.
With Mars squaring, we don't know if he's a day and night chart, but that's not encouraging. That
he's got the Sun-Mars conjunction.
Yeah, he likes to release things when the Sun is conjunct Mars, generally.
Yeah.
He released Dunkirk when the Sun was conjunct Mars and Leo in 2017.
Right.
A war film. So yeah, that's a big thing with him is Sun Mars. But
see, I'm thinking like Scorsese is 81 and he has released a masterpiece. And you know how the Oscars are. They don't always just award, the person they think is best. Sometimes they award someone for career achievement. We've seen this a number of times.
How many years does he have left? They may find this as the opportunity to kind of give Scorsese the sort of salute that he deserves. Yeah. Also,
that's a very Academy Award type of thing to do. I wonder, like, I'm just thinking out loud. I wonder if Scorsese doesn't win Best Director, but Oppenheimer wins Best Movie or something like that,
Right.
That does happen sometimes. That does happen sometimes, that there's a split between Best Director and Best Movie.
That's true. What was I going to say? Yeah, I guess I lost my train of thought there.
Oh, okay.
No. So, yeah, I remember. Notice that Christopher Nolan was born during the golden era of movies you talked about. The pre-Star Wars 70s. He was born. In fact, it's really funny. Christopher Nolan was born in, I think it was like around the same, like it was either in the same year or within a year that the IMAX format was developed. And Christopher Nolan is like this huge IMAX advocate. He thinks that's like the superior format to use, and he's like a big purist about cinema and filming on film rather than digitally, and so it's just kind of interesting that he himself comes from this era of movies that you kind of specifically identified as this kind of
Look,
high point.
good point. Now, he's born in July of 1970 with Neptune at 28 Scorpio. But this is Neptune in a regress into Scorpio. Neptune had gone into Sagittarius in January of 1970 and then regressed into Scorpio and would later make a second ingress into Sagittarius. So he does sort of touch on that Neptune and Sagittarius era that we're talking about.
In utero.
This Neptune is square his Mercury on Regulus, and we saw that Neptune was on Regulus when the Oscars were created. Venus is opposite his Mercury, making a T-square, and that terrible astrology podcast person is commenting that. Sorry, Chris. We love you. I'm just kidding. The very astute, notable astrologer Chris Brennan, who I'm not acquainted with at all, has pointed out that the movie came out. I forget the exact day it came out, but it was as Venus was going retrograde on Nolan's Mercury, and Venus is now opposite that Venus.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, come to think of it, it was coming out like the week of his birthday, even. God, it'd be great to know his birth time. Someone's got to track this guy down and ask him. And the movie came out when Uranus was on his Saturn.
Where it still is, basically.
Yeah.
Now a year later.
Yeah.
Well, less than a year later, but
yeah.
I will say that it looks like unambiguously great for Scorsese. And for Christopher Nolan, it looks a little more dicey. But not without some potential.
Yeah, I think Nolan can't lose in the big picture. Oppenheimer's gonna go home with more than a few, most likely, and it might even sweep. But maybe Best Director goes to Scorsese instead of Nolan, for the reasons we cited, because that is a very Academy Awards thing to do, is to give the award sometimes in the context of a lifetime achievement thing.
That's true. Do we have the choice of any of the other directors, or are we? I think are we out of juice?
We're pretty much out of juice. There was just one other person I wanted to talk about quickly, and that's one of the Best Supporting Actress nominees. Divine Joy Randolph. She's in this movie, The Holdovers, with Paul Giamatti, and she's nominated for Best Supporting Actress. And she's won a lot of the other awards so far, like the British Oscars and things like that. So she's considered to be something of a favorite for this. I just wanted to put her up there. She's another one of these people born with, just before Mars went retrograde in Capricorn. Just before the Mars retrograde in Capricorn. Who was I looking at just before that? Not Emma Stone is the Mars in Aries. Who was the Mars in Capricorn? Gladstone, Lily Gladstone, right. Interesting. Let's put her up on a bi-wheel with Lily Gladstone, because we've got a nominee for Best Actress and a nominee for Best Supporting Actress. Would it be interesting if these two women won? Pity we don't have a birth time for her.
Yeah, but if they had, with the same Mars kind of signature in a sense. Yeah. Similar Saturns. So Saturn would be approaching both of their Jupiters. Well, kind of. They're a little far off still.
Yeah, somewhat far off. But they both have Uranus square Jupiter, so maybe the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction sets these off.
Something that they hook into.
Yeah,
right. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is.
I was just about to watch The Holdovers, but then I don't
It looks
know.
good.
Beth came in and was like, "What are you watching?" And I'm like, "Ugh, nothing." She doesn't like movies quite as much as I do, I guess. But yeah, I
Oh,
guess I'll be trying to catch all these films and try to keep more on top of what's going on. As we've both been pretty busy with some of our extracurriculars
yeah,
that we
and
can't
I've
quite
also
talk about yet.
no. I also, of course, just flew to South Africa this week. I had a tooth pulled. I flew here on Tuesday. I had a tooth pulled on Wednesday. Um, I screwed up tonight by forgetting daylight savings time, so I didn't have my camera and microphone set up, and we're doing it. We're doing this to our largest audience we've had on the live stream so far, and I don't have my camera and microphone set up. Classic Nick Dagan best drop the ball on your foot.
Oh no.
Well, look, I'm a good astrologer, but I'm sometimes out to lunch on some other things. But anyway, I'll be back in full digital form next week. I promise. Chris also pointed out the upcoming Libra eclipse is going to be at 5 Libra, which is on Nolan's natal Uranus. So there's that interesting as well. Just one last little aside on that matter. But yeah, I think we're out of steam. I know tonight's been kind of a grab bag. We just we literally winging it, but Patrick and I are somewhat adept at winging it. I think for winging it, we did pretty well, didn't we?
Yeah, my wings are tied. But yeah, so next week we'll be back talking about Venus Saturn aspects, particularly the conjunction, since that is one of the aspects that will be happening. So
Very
we'll talk
excited
about
for
what that means and what some examples of that. And who are you, Nick? Usually that's what you say to me.
I'm Patrick Watson, and you can find me at patrickwatsоnastrology.com.
And I'm Nick Dagan Best. You can find me at Nick Dagan Best Astrologer.com. Anyway.
Fantastic. All right. Patrick Cirrus, thank you so much. Thank you, Chris, for saying good job despite our torrent of verbal abuse. We love you, man. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you to everyone for sticking with us. I hope this was as much fun for you guys as it was for us. Like I always say, I love doing this live stream because I get to talk to this guy every week, and that is worth the price of admission, so to speak.
Oh, thank you, Nick. So same to you.
Oh, Luna, thank you for your kind comment. Yeah, I'm really happy to be back with my family, our pets, the beautiful South African summer. So yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be back here. I just got to sort of sort out the live streaming game here. So yeah, you did catch me with my pants down, so to speak, even though I swear I'm wearing them.
Sure.
All right,
Prove it. No, just kidding. All right. So if you want to support these live streams, we will we have a Patreon. You can find us at the Astrology Livestream on Patreon. And if you, depending on the tier you join, you can join us for our private live streams, which happen on the second Saturday of each month. We actually did one just yesterday night, and we talked about skeptics and some of the developments involving that on Twitter. That's where we kind of blow off steam about things that are happening in astrology, and sometimes showing things we're working on. And then on the fourth Saturday of each month, we have our movie nights, our watch parties. So you can join those if you join the highest tier of support on Patreon, and we watch a movie on live chat together over Amazon. And then we meet up after the movie to discuss the astrological themes of the movie, and you get to vote on the movie as well. So we don't know what movie it will be yet, because we'll be starting the voting on that at some point next week. So just let you know.
The movie nights have been great, and as you folks heard, Patrick doesn't get to see a lot of movies. Maybe this is why he proposed this for our patrons, so he can actually get to watch some, because his wife deprives him, alas.
But no, it's not. It's not Beth's fault necessarily. I mean, my life is work. Pretty much.
No, I
So
know you work, and also when you have kids, that's the thing is I was able to sneak off and go see these movies because I was in Vancouver. I had a little more sort of personal time on hand, and so
yeah. I have a movie
yeah.
night with the kids, but it's pulling teeth getting them to watch anything that's we kind of to sort of pick family fare.
No, for sure, for sure.
They're not going to watch Oppenheimer.
No, Ayanda
Not
won't
yet.
watch anything that isn't anime. So that's that's where I am. It's
Yeah.
not anime, then it's not a movie as far as she's concerned. So there goes that. All right. Well, thank you, Watson. Who are you, Patrick? Or have we already done that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you can find
Okay.
me and my stuff at patrickwatsоnastrology.com, and you can find me on most social media sites at pwatsonastro.
Fantastic. And I am Nick Dagan Best. You can find me at nickdaganastastrologer.com. And you can find me, just Google my name, Nick Dagan Best. That's the only thing I use. All right. Well, enjoy the Oscars, everyone. Thank you for turning up, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you as always, Patrick. Love you, man. Love you, everyone. Or I'm sure, well, maybe there's some of you I wouldn't love. I don't know. Some of you I haven't met, but in spirit, I
Like
love you
that Chris guy.
Yeah, that Chris guy. Fuck him. Excuse my French. I'm terrible. Okay. All right. Have yourselves a great night or afternoon or whatever time it is where you guys are. And it's still afternoon where you guys are. It's bedtime for me. All right. Fantastic. Bye for now, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.